So in the last session, we learned about CSV reader and CSV writer file methods. Now, as we saw in that method, the output is given as a list of lists where each row is a list. So now imagine that if you have a list of let's say 10,000 rows and you want to access one value from that list, and you want to work and calculate and run operations on that value. Now that becomes difficult, doesn't it? For that reason, there is another way in which you can access the content and edit and change and read and write the content of a CSV file. This is by a method called dict reader and dict writer, where the first row of the CSV file will get converted into a row of dictionaries. Okay, so as we saw, our CSV file, the first row had the column names in it, right? The date, the stock name, the open, high, low, close, etc. So the first row had the column names. So the column names, each column name gets converted into a dictionary. Okay, and the key value is the column name, and the key is the column name, and the value is whatever is there in that column, all the components of that column. So let us see, I'll show you an example of opening that same Maruti CSV file with a dict reader, and then we'll try changing it and doing stuff with it. So again, we start with our import CSV program, import CSV. Why? Because it's an inbuilt module which you require to call in your program. After that, you go in with open. Okay. So the open is obviously a much Maruti with open Maruti.csv. Okay. Now here you can write R, or even if you don't write, it's fine, as file 1. Okay, reader data is equal to CSV dot dict reader, where D and R is capital, into bracket file 1. Okay, for row in reader data. Okay, now let me see if I print the row, what output you're gonna get. So here, if I print row, I don't know if I'll get an output. Let us see what we get. There you get. So you get each and every row as an ordered dictionary. Okay, where this is your key, that is the date, and this is the value, symbol. So key and date, this is your symbol, is your key, and then it's Maruti. So for every row, you get the key value tuple that is out here. Okay. Now let's see if I want to print the date and the closing price only of Maruti. Okay. Now this is a dictionary, as I told you. So each row is a dictionary. Okay. So now what I have to do is, I have to go in row, I have to type date, okay, which is the column name, which is also the key, okay, comma, row, and what is this called, open, last, close price. Yeah, this is the thing, right? Close price is the key name. So we'll have a row close price, right? So now it's going to print only the date and the closing price values out here. Okay. Now again, if you see, this close price has a space bar before it for some reason. You see this? So I have to add a space bar here in the key. Now if I do it, there you go. I get every row, every date and the closing price. Okay. So this is how I can access data in the dictionary, a much more meaningful way to access the data than the earlier one where we saw CSV.reader. Dict reader is a much more meaningful way to access the data basically. Okay, so now similarly there is a CSV.dict writer. Okay, now let us make another file, okay, of Maruti which has only the dates and the closing prices in it. Okay, so now what we'll do is with open and I'll call this Maruti2.csv, comma, and now we need W because we are creating a new file or writing the data in the file, okay, as file 2. Okay, now you have to remember what we did last time. Okay, first we need to define which columns are there in it. So let me just call this column. Okay, column names. Okay, and I'll give a list. List mein I'm gonna give one column as date and the other column as closing price. Okay, now I have to now create an object called writer data and I have to initialize it with CSV.dict writer. Okay, D and W is capital. Okay, in this now I have to, in dict reader, if you remember, I gave a file name out here. Okay, same way I need to give a file name out here also. So I'll give it the file 2, the variable of the file name, file 2, and I need to give it field names, basically the keys, which in our case is the column names that we created. Okay, so field names, you don't have to have colon, you have to have equal to, okay, and column names. So this is how you do this. Okay, you have initialize. Okay, so now when I do writer data dot write header. So when I do this, it's gonna write the first row which has the column names in the Excel file. Okay, now what I have to do is I have to put these two values, okay, these two dictionaries out here. Okay, now how do I do that is I'll have to first create a variable, store these values in it, okay, and then I will have to call a for loop and write these values out here. So that's how we do it. So let's do that. So here's what we are going to do. We are first going to create a list, okay, and we are going to add these date and closing price values in the list. Then we are going to write, use the write row method, okay, create a dictionary from the list, and we are going to write the date and closing price column values in the new CSV file called Maruti2. So let's do it. So I'll create a list1 called list1 is equal to blank. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm creating a new list here called A. A is a list of these two values, okay, like this. Okay, so whatever I have printed out here, you know, this row and date, the row and closing price that got printed out, okay, that same thing is getting entered into one list of lists. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to append A to list1. Okay, so all these things which got printed out, the date and the closing price of Maruti from this Maruti.csv got appended to list1. Okay, Now what we are going to do is we are going to take let me think one sec. We need to create a dictionary. Okay, so we need writer data, okay, which is the object that we have created, writer data dot. So we've already written the header row by using write header method. Now I have to write row. In the write row, you have to write a dictionary. Okay, why? Because writer data is a dict writer. Okay, so that's why you have to write a dictionary. So these dictionary has the column date and closing price. Each of them are the key. So for the key date, okay. Oh, I also need to access the list. So first what I'll do is for each row of this list 1. Okay, wait, let me show you what list 1 looks like. Okay. There, I'm printing list 1 here. So list 1 has got date as the first value and closing price as the second value. And this entire list 1 ka first value is this list of 2 things. So it's a list of lists, okay, where each value is a list having 2 components. Okay. So now what I have to do is I have to now go here, okay, and access this list components using a for this thing. Let me get this up. Okay, so for values in list 1, okay, then I have to put this in the block, so 1 tab space. Okay, writer data dot write row. So first it will go to the first value of list 1, which is this list 17th April 20 and 5505. So date is nothing but values 0. Okay, and the second column that we made here is closing price, right? Put that as the key, colon, and values 1. Okay, so these are values. Okay, values is the name given to this first list or the list of list 1. Value 0 is the date and value 1 is the closing price. That gets added to write row. Then it goes to the next value, again the date and closing price. That way for all the values, that is all these lists which are there in list 1, is going to take the first value, put it in the date, second value, put in the closing price. This entire dictionary is 1 row and this is writer data dot write row. So this is how we took that Maruti CSV file with date, stock price, open, high, low, close, volume, all those things, and we just took certain values which we want and we put it in a new CSV file called Maruti 2. Once this entire thing is done, we just want to print file done and that's it, right? Now when I run this program, it says file done. So now when our this thing Maruti 2 file done, 2 columns, date, closing price, and all of these. You can see these values here very clearly. Okay, so that is that. Don't save. Right? So this is how you write files to a CSV file, and that's it, using a dict writer. Okay, you can also add a default delimiter here. Remember, comma delimiter is equal to comma and all those things. So you can add that here, and you can, if it's not a CSV file or something, it's useful, right? So this is how you do. I suggest you practice and play with reading and writing files, normal text files and CSV files, and also try editing its values and appending the file, etc. And I'll see you in the next session.